At the end of the 2000s, Snow White's Poison Bite would jump into the alternative scene and tease us emo kids with tracks such as the End of Prom Night. Before Spotify's domination in the industry, discovering music through iHeartRadio was a go-to for me, making this beloved band, or SWPB, hit my radar. I would be listening to artists like Bring Me the Horizon, Escape the Fate, BOTDF, I Know, Leave Me Alone, or Chelsea Grin, and after a few skips, iHeartRadio would suggest Christy Killings, which could be found on Snow White's Poison Bite's first album. Let me just tell you that this band hit all the right moods when I was an angsty teen. It had instrumentals similar to Black Veil Bride's Perfect Weapon and vocals closer to Escape the Fate's track Flood, which is just crazy to think about how many of these bands smashed the end of the 2000s. However, one thing that would make Snow White's Poison Bite stand out amongst the rest was its use of horror with a pop-punk narrative. Not many bands of the time could pull off the insane clown posse look or sound while preaching to the edgy emo kids, but SWPB for sure had the production to back it up. Jeremy 13th, or Alan, who became the face of the group during its success, would have motivation behind his vocals and writing skill, pushing them to stardom and fame. However, the band would experience a dreadful lullaby with lineup changes, upsetting record label deals, and a revamp of SWPB. What would happen to this beloved band that ushered in the next phase of screamo pop punk music? And was it because of Alan stealing money, or was it because of the record label behind the scenes? There was a new creep on the block in the 2010s, and they were known as Snow White's Poison Bite. This edgy screamo band would be at the forefront of the new wave within alternative culture. And starting in the mid-late 2000s, SWPB was seen as potential because of their charisma behind its Finland roots. There isn't much on the band's history or how all the original members came together to form such an amazing sound. But what I could find was within 2 years of its startup, they had released a demo and were signed by Poco Records, or EMI, at the end of 2008 and early 2009. In a podcast episode of Ian Hates Music, Jeremy 13th, or Alan, would state that music gravitated towards him from family ties, but also SWPB was his first at writing and being a part of a group.
Since I got that guitar, I just started playing. I never really got in bands or anything, so I was like, at the time I was like not as good as everyone else. This is my first band anyway I've ever I'd started.
I will leave a link in the description to that podcast episode. But in the mid-2000s, MySpace and YouTube were used as a tool to promote new music, and through works like Christy Killings, Snow White's Poison Bite would be discovered within US audiences. This would in return make them a powerhouse within emo culture, leading the band on tour in 2009 alongside Alesana, who were this amazing post-hardcore or screamo band that are still one of the greats of that time. Apology by Alesana was hands down my go-to when I was feeling angsty. Snow White's Poison Bite's EP or demo released in 2008 and their first album in 2010 would showcase the band's talents, and by 2013, Victory Records would pick them up. However, through that 3-year time period before SWPB was signed to Victory, they would face member dropouts, record label issues, and the music itself would jump from genre to genre, leaving fans confused as to what Snow White's Poison Bite was. In the mid-2010s, Snow White's Poison Bite would fade from alternative culture, leaving a fan base of confusion. There are a few theories out there on what might have happened, as some people would state that after SWPB was rebranded as 13th, Alan, who was the lead singer, would take the money and run from the new merch line and sound after scrubbing what remained of the band off the internet. Even looking at some of the links, Facebook pages, IG handles, and YouTube channels, it would definitely appear that way and could be a possibility. However, looking at what interviews remain through sources such as Ian Hates Music again, there were clear signs of struggle with record labels not taking the band seriously.
What would happen to this band if more people in the business would dare to take us on and help us out and see how big we can get this? But for some reason, I've tried tried with some people and people just won't take the band on for some reason.
This growing tension and how some members felt about touring, or at least asking questions about where the band or rebrand would go, left to multiple lineup changes.
And then 3 years went by, that band expanded, and I still wanted to continue. I got our current bass player, Hanno, who's with us now. We had some other dudes who really didn't obviously know what they want to do with their lives.
But it wasn't just these differences within Snow White's Poison Bite. After the signing of Victory Records, this is where the band really fell down in the morgue. Victory has been known to have scandals with artists either from taking more revenue than what the bands were promised, or major lawsuits like what happened to A Day to Remember. And at that time, record labels like Victory or Epitaph were picking up artists left and right from hits on MySpace, and the bands themselves would usually fall right after. But SWPB's disappearance was not only due to the shady record deals, as most members just wanted to stay out of the spotlight. Touring can be harsh, and having a life outside of fame is even harder. This would lead fans to question whether or not a return would actually happen. It is not all Valentine's doom for Snow White's Poison Bite, however, as the fans behind this band make it memorable. From touring alongside major players with the emo and scene culture, to being a part of bigger record labels within rock and metal of the time, SWPB was a defining moment of the 2010s. Hits such as the End of Prom Night, bringing an energetic emotion towards alternative sound, and the music video itself would be posted by Brian Stars or Brian O'Dell, who at the time had the scoop on all things rock and metal with interesting interviews and music videos. There are so many memorable moments with Brian Stars. Like, the dude is just lucky to have met and hosted such amazing talents. Even though SWPB was rebranded as 13th and they had somewhat of a different sound, its close ties to Screamo made the band a huge success in 2010. So, before I end this video, I want to shed some light on what this band meant to me. Discovering this band in the late 2000s and early 2010s made me feel closer to being myself. And regardless of what theories that are out there, true or not, SWPB definitely pushed boundaries for me and what I wanted to focus on within music. There were a lot of times that because my friend group had different opinions about the band, or the fact that they did not sound like Attila or Icy Stars, would leave my music taste in outcasts within the outcasts. Being unique and wanting to see what fits for you is what Snow White's Poison Bite is about. And I am glad to see a fan base around this band within current platforms like TikTok, making them go down as one of the greats within emo culture.